I think too, though, that we might put too much emphasis on, and I know we do this in the design world for sure, but in general with all of our AI, is getting people to an emotion rather than understanding all the emotions that are happening along the way. So instead of thinking of emotion as a destination, thinking of emotion as more of a signal of what's happening, what you need to pay attention to, maybe even what you value.
Welcome to Digital Mindfulness. I'm your host, Lawrence Ampofo. Joining me today is the entrepreneur, author and researcher, Pamela Pavliscak. In this episode, Pamela talks to us about her work with emotionally intelligent machines and artificial intelligence, and also how they have the potential to positively impact society with more humane digital experiences. But before we begin, welcome to Digital Mindfulness, where we bring you the best teachers and thought leaders from around the world to discuss how human-focused digitized experiences can help shape a better future for humanity. If you're new to our show, then the best place to find out much more about us is to visit digitalmindfulness.net, where you'll find a collection of some required listening shows where we discuss everything from digital wellness to persuasive technologies, behavior design, and much, much more. Okay, so enjoy the show with Pamela Pavliscak. Hi there, Pamela. Thanks so much for being on Digital Mindfulness today. I'm really thrilled to be able to talk to you about your work and this fascinating area of emotionally intelligent machines. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lawrence. I'm excited to be here.
So Pamela, tell us a little bit about yourself and particularly your journey to be working in this space of the intersection of technology with human society.
Well, I didn't take a direct path, and I don't know how many people did. I didn't even start out in tech. I was cultural studies and humanities, and I then late 90s got really fascinated with tech. And for some crazy reason, I thought, oh, there's no way anyone will ever make money off the internet. It's all about like art. And so that's how I got into it. And then gradually established a research company and tried to understand how people were using technology. Then a few years ago, I sort of had this realization because everyone I would talk to, I'd say, oh yeah, I work in tech. And instead of saying, oh, cool, that's awesome, they would say, oh yeah, it's really stressing me out or letting me down or making me physically ill in some cases. And I thought to myself, well, what am I doing? I thought I was making people's lives better, but I don't think I am. And so I had kind of this moment where I thought, well, do I stay in tech and try to understand this, or do I just, open a bakery or something like that? So I guess I decided to stay in and start researching and understanding our emotional relationship with technology. And that's kind of where I'm at still today.
The whole issue of linking emotions to machines and software, this is something that, although it's incredibly interesting, it's really, really newsworthy now and something that is absolutely within the public consciousness. And one of the reasons this is the case is because of the psychological and emotional impact that our digital experiences can have on us. But I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit as to why is the emotional link with our digital experiences, why is that so important to society at the moment?
Yeah, I think that it comes from a bunch of different factors. I think that a lot of people in the industry are realizing what happened in the last election cycle in the US, and that's made a lot of people kind of wake up and think about, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve with technology? I think there's been study of the impact on technology and well-being and those relationships. It's not all bad, though. That's the thing. So I think that
Mm.
we easily get pulled into this narrative that technology has this negative impact, which is real. There are negative impacts, but it's easy to kind of focus in on that more than thinking about, well, what can we do that's positive, that can make it better. And so I think that's what's kind of going on right now, is we're seeing that struggle play out. And a lot of the language that we even use about talking about the struggle, we talk about a crisis of attention or
Mm.
distraction. And I think in a way, we're talking about emotional well-being more than anything else. Even though we're not saying the words emotion or emotional impact, that's
Mm.
what's underneath all of that, is that not only are we paying attention to the wrong things, but we're it's making us feel anxious and making us feel these kind of stressful feelings that give us signals like, yeah, this is not the way we want things to go.
So, in a lot of discussions that I've had with people, with experts, there are some people who would say that actually machines don't make us feel anything. That the digital environment doesn't make us feel anything. That the anxiety, or not, no, that's the wrong word. That the anxiety or the ill feelings that people feel, these are things that were there already. So, particularly perhaps with the case of children, or teenagers, that their bodies are going through such change anyway that this is what they would have felt anyway. What would you say to that? Do you think it's a kind of that technological determinism, as it were, or rather is it the other way round?
I I mean, I'm kind of a pragmatist, so I think that there's some truth to that. Teenagers through, the 50s, when teenagers were invented, I think, because people didn't really have teenage years before then, so to speak. Um, until now, go through a lot of the same issues. I mean, they're very focused on their peers, they're figuring out their identity in a way that we do through our whole lives, but it's really intense when you're a teenager. Friendships are really important. You're stepping away from your parents. There's all kinds of stuff going on when you're a teenager that is not necessarily caused by technology, but
Mm.
technology's tangled up in it. I think that's the frustration I have with a lot of the conversations right now. It's sort of, we still have this approach that, well, there's one school of thought that says, okay, technology's neutral and it's just kind of the playing field for all of this stuff that would have happened anyway. And then there's another field of thought that says, well, technology is having a negative impact, so we need to take time off from technology to restore our balance. I guess I'm going to say there's a third way, that we're like completely tangled up in technology. The way we think, the way we feel. We're designing technology and technology designs us.
Mhm.
It's not a relationship that can be separated out so that technology is neutral or that we can step away from technology. Even when we're not using technology, our reality is framed by it in a lot of ways. So let's say, Lawrence, you and I decide we're going to go for a stroll in the woods near my house. We can't do
Mhm.
that right now because you're in London and I'm in New York, but we could someday do that. We might be on our stroll. We might say, yeah, we're not going to take our phones with us. But we still might think, wow, wouldn't it be cool to Instagram this later? Or look at that vista. That I'm going to, I think about framing it because I think about photographing things all the time. Or maybe I think about how I'm going to post about this later. Or it's simply, I want to look at it on a map later and see where I am. And I wouldn't have had that capability. So all of these things that we feel like we're getting away, there is no way, I guess, is what I think. And so we have to kind of come to terms with that and figure out how we're going to co-evolve in a way with technology that supports humans and doesn't, mechanize us, I guess.
So I guess then talking about this now, this whole idea of the kind of the co-evolution of technology and human society or humanity, these are the things that would preoccupy you most with change sciences. So I'm wondering if you can just talk about what change sciences is exactly and why it's so important.
Yeah, well, I founded the company quite a while ago, and it's evolved over the years, but the focus has always been understanding how people engage with technology
Mm,
and how to make that more meaningful, more purposeful, more emotionally fulfilling. I think when, we all started on this journey with technology, say 15, 20 years ago, for some of us, definitely for me, that meant being more productive, being more efficient, making things easy. I think what's happened, at least in terms of the work I've been doing in the past, say, especially 5 years, is moving away from that and saying, well, that doesn't always play to the better angels of our nature. That instead we need to be looking at other factors that are involved in our use of technology. And so we've been looking at emotional impact and what kind of purpose, values, all of that kind of engagement. And we've been looking a lot to models of well-being. So a lot of communities and countries, and even globally now, there are indexes that look at well-being as sort of a complex system of factors. It's not just, do you feel happy right now, but how does your happiness impact other people? What contributes to people's happiness? If you look at countries, it's education, it's healthcare, it's
mm,
environment, and we're trying to think bigger picture when we're working with clients to bring them to sort of that realization, like, oh, technology doesn't exist in a vacuum, and yes, it exists to turn a profit in a lot of cases, but that has to
mm,
be balanced with these other aspects that will build kind of a longer term relationship.
mm. So one of the things we were talking about before we came on air was this whole idea of emotionally intelligent machines,
Mm.
and you kind of referenced it very briefly a little while ago, but the whole idea of meaningful tech as well. And of course, this is really interesting to me because this is what the very biggest technology companies in the world are talking about now. How do we create these meaningful experiences, and the ripple effects for everyone are going to be profound. But what, in your mind, and particularly from the research that you've conducted, what are meaningful digital experiences?
Well, I think that it's not so different from experiences that we have overall. I think there's probably three big factors that meaningful experiences sort of gravitate around. One is, does it challenge you? Is it challenge your capabilities, your perspective, your view of the world? So challenging would be one. A second one would be creative. Does it allow you to creatively engage? And I don't mean, making great artworks or anything by any means, but being able to feel like you have agency, you're contributing, you're participating in a way that stretches you a little bit. And then the
Mm,
third way, I think, is community and connection, is feeling that that kind of sense of belonging, that sense of shared purpose. So those are really the three big patterns that run throughout any meaningful experience that I've seen in my own research, but I think that's general consensus if you look at, social psychology now, and the study of, like positive psychology or perspective psychology looks at those same kind of issues.
that's really fascinating because everything you've just described sounds a lot like flow, the psychological theory from Csikszentmihalyi, which talks about all of these things that you just mentioned, that to do an activity where it is slightly challenging, where you do have to reach a little bit, but something that completely envelops you, this sounds a lot like a flow state to me. And the reason why I'm going on and on about this might well be because I'm in flow just now, but It seems to me that the real issue that we're talking about here, and especially with meaningful digital experiences, is attention, basically. And that what we need to do, or rather what is being encouraged now by digital service providers, is that we cultivate a new type of attention. And that type of attention that we do cultivate when we're in a flow state, when we are, for example, connecting with friends and family, when we are uninterrupted by any outside stimuli. That type of attention, particularly in an attention economy where our focused attention is commoditized and sold, that type of attention is really very important, but it's something that's ours, uniquely human.
I think so. I think attention is definitely, I mean, that's what makes up your life, right? What you pay attention to is adds up to your life in the end. And I think if you look at, say, the latest research in psychology, I mean, there's three threads, right? Like historically, psychology has looked at, well, Freud or Jung or something like that. That would be your past. Your past shapes, future you. I think a lot of psychology now around mindfulness, around attention, focuses on sort of how you pay attention to the present is really important. I think there's a fair amount of new thinking in psychology that's how we conceive of the future shapes our lives. So there's three different ways I think of paying attention that really factor into that. I'm interested most in the future way because I think that's been the least explored, and I think right now that's something we're confronting in a big way. So I think, for instance, all the discussions about future of work and the future of artificial intelligence taking over human tasks, I think part of what's going on there is that it's almost a mental health crisis in the making because people are feeling not just like they're going to lose their jobs, but they're going to lose their purpose and they're going to lose their agency in their lives. And I think that what's going on as part of it is we have a hard time imagining our future selves. We know we make mistakes imagining our future selves. If you look at, say, like Dan Gilbert and effective forecasting, he makes the point that we mistakenly think we're finished when we're works in progress. And there's been tons of interesting research lately about how if we have a better understanding of what our life looks like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we'll make better decisions now for that future self. So I think attention, we tend to think of attention as just like paying attention to now and being in the present moment. But I think it might actually be all three of those things, past, present, and future, that are part of this attention crisis that's happening right now.
Okay. I'm just thinking though, then, in that case, do emotionally intelligent machines or emotionally intelligent digital experiences, do they rather support people in alleviating these crises, as it were? Like, so do they help give context to past, present, future?
I don't know. I'm conflicted on this because I do think that emotionally intelligent machines means a lot of different things. To some people, it means robots with human personalities that are, that can sense emotions or even kind of have some type of emotion, Westworld style, or hopefully kinder. And then, to other people, it means the ability of technology to help us understand our own emotions and regulate those emotions and be able to express them. I mean, that's what a lot of effective computing has come out of, that tradition of treating people on the autism spectrum, people with PTSD, to recognize their emotions and then be able to understand or signal those emotions to other people around them. I think there's probably value in both of those areas of exploration. I think, too, though, that we might put too much emphasis on, and I know we do this in the design world for sure, but in general with all of our AI, is getting people to an emotion rather than understanding all the emotions that are happening along the way. So instead of thinking of emotion as a destination, thinking of emotion as more of a signal of what's happening, what you need to pay attention to, maybe even what you value in the long term. So I think, I'm not going to say we never want to get people to a better place. That's therapy, like that's, and maybe, and therapy with chatbots and technology, that's a valid thing, and that helps a lot of people. But I think we have to be really cautious when we talk about commercial ventures that are trying to get people to their happy place to buy things or to spend more time or to put them in a direction that they might not be in. And that's like the tension in emotionally intelligent machines right now, is that like it could really be great and helpful and help us become more emotionally intelligent and feel different emotions and new flavors of emotions. It could also kind of reduce all that to just the 5 that are detected by the machines, and drive us toward 1 or 2 of those that, we know are going to have the effect that we want. And so I think that's, I don't have an easy answer to that. I don't think anyone does at this point, but those are the big questions.
I was really fascinated. I remember when looking through your work at just some of the applications for intelligent or emotionally intelligent machines. And it really just blew my mind, how you can use emotionally intelligent machines to help bridge the gap between what we intend to do and what our actions ultimately are. Very similar to the kinds of work that are happening at Dopamine Labs with Ramsey Brown. And these have extraordinary applications for areas like health, for example. If we can be nudged in the direction through our machines to make more healthful choices, for example, that benefit our health in the long term, this is incredibly important. But also, these same applications for emotionally intelligent machines are being used for other things like Black Friday and, enabling us to buy more things and be more effective in the economy.
We have to keep in mind that advertising and marketing already does try to play with our emotions and understands emotions and drives us to an emotional place. But this takes it to a much more intimate level, because when you're actually sensing people's emotions and then being able to aggregate all those together and say, well, on average, most people respond to this stimulus in this particular way, and then when they feel that way, they do this or they buy this. That's just not where I want to see technology go. I think that's not where most people want to see it go. Instead, I think most people would say, yeah, we want it to be something that supports humans, brings out the best in humans, that brings us to a greater understanding of our own emotional intelligence. Because I think that, I don't know, we have this kind of assumption, I feel like I read about this a lot, that, okay, the age of AI is coming and they're taking our jobs, and, but the place for humans is empathy and emotions. But the fact is, a lot of us humans aren't very good at that stuff as it is, so it's a little presumptuous to think like, oh, first of all, the robots will never get that. Second of all, that humans are intrinsically good at that stuff, because clearly you just look around at the world today and you'll realize that we're not. I think that there's a lot that we can teach each other and co-evolve. Like I teach a class on speculative design, where we look at making emotional machines. That's one of the things that we're trying out together. And so one of the things is we try out some of the emotion sensing AI for facial recognition and voice recognition. The truth is that AI picks up on stuff that we humans just don't. But we humans understand a lot of things that the AI doesn't. We get a lot of the context. We have a whole repertoire that we can draw on that's culturally informed. Um, I I don't think one necessarily is better than the other. I think we're going to
Mm.
learn from the AI, and the AI is going to learn from us, and it's going to be this kind of symbiotic relationship, as weird as that may be, and but I think that's kind of our destiny at this point, and we should just maybe accept it and see what we can do with that.
Everything that we're speaking about here, Pamela, about the fears that people might have of emotionally intelligent machines, it really leads me to think about the outsourcing of memory and all of the fears that elicited. And it does make me think about where our minds stop and where machines actually begin, particularly as, for example, we don't now have to remember phone numbers. We don't have to remember these little things. And even people are thinking we don't need to remember facts. We can just go to Google and we can search for them. So I'm wondering if you think that even though it's become possible to an extent to outsource our memories, some of our memories, the ability to remember certain things like phone numbers, do you think with the onset of emotionally intelligent machines that we'll be outsourcing our emotions as well?
I hope not, but conceivably, that could happen. It's already happening a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
think about um, LinkedIn's a really good example, right? Because you're sending a message to somebody and it prompts you with a lot of automated choices to respond, like thumbs up or yeah, catch you later, whatever. I don't even know what they are. I try not to use them, but it's tempting. And Gmail does the same. And, when we're texting each other, our predictive text suggests emojis for us, it suggests text, and it's outsourcing a little bit of that intimacy, that we that creativity, that community, that those things that give us meaning are being then outsourced. And I think that's what we have to be careful of. And it's a tricky balance. I know a lot of people say, like, well, let the machines do what the machines are good at and the people do what the people are good at. But what are those things? They're all mixed up together now, so, and some of the things that machines are potentially good at can give people meaning. So think of, I'll use myself as an example. I don't know why, but I love raking leaves and I love stacking wood, and it's just, it's outdoors, it's meditative, it's fun because the kids will come and mess up all my leaves and stuff like that. And I'm sure a robot could do better at that, obviously. And I mean, other humans can do better than I can at that too, let's face it. But it's like, do we get rid of that or not? I don't know. These are tricky questions. So I'm always suspicious when people are so certain, like, yes, these are the robot things and these are the people things, and robots are good at this and people are good at this. And I think, well, it's pretty mucked up. I mean, we've already been kind of, rearranged by technology throughout the years, right? Like, we couldn't travel. Now we can because of cars and airplanes. Radio has messed us up. I mean, long ago, it was novels that were messing with women's brains in particular back in the 19th century. Like, any technology is sort of changing us. And I don't think there's a way to kind of tease that out. So I hope we don't outsource some of those things. But then on the other hand, I think to myself, well, maybe we'll develop different conceptions of what that means, what happiness is. There's not like one truth to it.
So, Pamela, we've been talking at a really high level about emotionally intelligent machines and artificial intelligence, co-evolution of machines with society, etc. But I wonder if you can give us just a couple of examples of really excellent emotionally intelligent design and just the impact that that's having on society.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think where we're seeing the most interesting work is on the psychology and healthcare front.
Right.
So, apps that are therapist chatbots, for instance, fill a real gap. There's not enough people getting access to therapy or just not comfortable talking face to face with somebody.
Yeah.
That fills a need. Even with chatbots being as limited as they are right now, I think that's an area to watch that I think is going to see positive growth. I think a few of the apps I've seen recently, like in hackathons and those kind of contexts, so I don't know if they're developed out as apps, is looking at Alzheimer's and trying to develop ways where people to help people with Alzheimer's and their families reconstruct memories, find meaningful ways to communicate with each other, sort of keep in the game, so to speak. And I think that holds a lot of promise. On the other hand, I think what gets a lot of attention is sort of the humanized robots that maybe show a feeling or recognize feelings or things like that. I don't think we're going to stop people from making robots in human images, but I think that's in a way I don't know if it's a detractor from well-being, but it's certainly a distraction in a lot of cases because I sometimes think you don't really need all your technology to be embodied in a personality, and that has a lot of limitations to it. And I don't know, when I'm working with clients, I always think about the scale, like are you is this technology that's something that is in the background? Is it something that's on your body that you've kind of fused with? Is it something in between where it's mediating your relationship with somebody or your relationship with the world? Once you start thinking about those relationships, then you can really think about, well, does this need its own personality? Like um, Siri or something like that, or can it just be, you know, be as
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. So, so Pamela, in this age of emotionally intelligent machines, what would you say then are the most important human qualities, and how do we cultivate those?
Good question, Lawrence. I'm so glad you asked. I think that for everyone, I think that we can use this as an opportunity to cultivate our own emotional intelligence, to develop greater empathy and compassion for each other, to understand our own emotions. Let's use these new ways of being to understand those emotions better. I think on the side of technology's makers, designers, and developers, the one value I'd like to see carry forward and for the next, say, 5 years is humility. I really feel like the past decade we've been moving really fast, disrupting everything with this kind of short-term view that and this kind of hubris that we can make the world better with technology, and the future is synonymous with technology. I think I'd like to see people in tech sort of step back from that and say, well, let's just be humble for a little bit and let's just see like how what we're making fits in with the rest of the world and the way what's great about human beings and what's great about society and what we need to do to move forward together and create a world that we want to live in, that isn't just optimized for our convenience and productivity.
Mm. So, Pamela, where can people find out more about you and connect with you and just learn more about your work?
The best way is probably either at changesciences.com or on Twitter. My handle's Pam in the Lab, since it's impossible to spell my last name. Um, and hopefully people will reach out. I'd love to chat. And it was such a pleasure chatting with you today, too, Lawrence.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much for being a part of this show. It's been a pleasure having you on.